You can be seated. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Man. If you know what Stu was just talking about. And if you don't, the invitation stands to know. There's nothing. It's an open invitation. Like that's, and I'm really thankful that I don't have to earn it. He's good, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you have a Bible, and I hope you do, if you don't, we have free ones right over here. Open it up to Matthew chapter 11. Feel free to use the table of contents. Matthew's the first, what's called the Gospels, or the testimonies of who Jesus was and what he did in his life. And it's the first book in the New Testament, so if you find the divide between the old and new, you can kind of navigate that way. But as you find your way there, I want to talk to you just a moment about kind of what we're going to find in this text. And there's been many times in my life that I've found myself tired, broken, hurt, suffering, in pain. And sometimes that is due to my own decisions, right? Can anybody relate? You made some decisions in life that led to some pain and some suffering and some heartache on your own. And then if I'm honest, there's been times where I've been hurt by others. The pain, the burden, the challenges, the overwhelmed feelings came from exterior and was pushed on me by others and other relationships. And here's what I want to tell you. When I'm overwhelmed, your boy gets in like focus mode. Okay, Elizabeth calls it work Austin. Welcome, this is work Austin. And here's how I operate. I don't really have concern for anyone's feelings. It's just very clear, very short directives. Do this, do that. This is the expectation. There's nothing like, it's just like very choppy language, and it's just boom, head down, focused, look out. And really, if I'm honest, man, it's about control. It's because I feel like things are slipping through my fingertips, and I'm trying to get it back. And it wouldn't be slipping through my fingertips if everybody would just do what I'm telling them to do. Anybody? Am I the only jacked up one in here? Sometimes I'm just tired and broken and hurt. And when that happens, man, like relationally or something, and as rare as it happens, sometimes my wife has wounded me in our relationship. It's very much the other way. I do a lot of wounding. But the few times that what I have a tendency to do is I'm an introvert at heart, so I sink deep into that introvert, right? And I disengage. And it's not just that I like get alone. Here's what I do when I'm alone. Again, that's what I say to people all the time. If you came here today looking for the perfect church and the perfect pastor, you found, I would say this church is pretty close to perfect in my opinion. Their pastor, however, is far from it. So just know that. So this is how jacked up I am when I get into that introspection. I don't just sit there quietly, solemnly, like seeking after the Lord, sadly. What I begin to do is I pick apart others and I pick apart myself, and I'm real good at both of those. And I get in this spiral. And in those moments, what I need to hear is the truth. And what's crazy is, like, this is not braggadocious or anything. I know a lot of the Bible. And so I know the truth that I need. I know the advice that I would give you if you came to me doing what I'm doing to myself. But I don't want to hear it. I definitely don't want to heed it. And in this text, what we see is God speaking to humanity. It's this weird position Jesus finds himself in where everyone's around him. All these people are around him. And he opens up a window to communication between the Son and the Father. And he begins to talk to the Father, but in such a way that we would listen and take heed his words. That we would listen to what he has to say. So it's to the Father, but it's for you and I. It's for the people sitting around him or standing around him, and it's for us today. Spurgeon said that there's only one place Jesus shares with us his own heart, and it's here in Matthew chapter 11. Another theologian said, perhaps the most wonderful words whispered by human breath is the text we're going to look at today. And it's because we all have found ourselves in positions that I just described. You fill in the blank. I told you my flavors of issues. As I say, you may not be like me, but I have this sneaky suspicion that you're a lot more like me than you think. You just need to fill in your flavor. What is it that you do when you get overwhelmed or you get hurt and so on and so forth? We all have these things, and we need to come to the truth of the gospel and receive it, hear it, and then heed it. Take it to heart. I think we could all nod our head and say that's true. If you have your word and you found your way to Matthew chapter 11, say word. Let's get into the word so the word can get into us. Verse 28. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take up my yoke and learn from me. Why? Because I am lowly and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is the word of the Lord. Let's pray together. Father, we come to you once again in prayer. If there was ever time that we need you, it's in this moment as we begin to talk about and discuss the moment when Jesus exposes the heart of God. Who can know the heart? Who can know it? And here we're going to talk about your heart. I pray that our hearts would be open to what you describe and how you talk about your own heart and your posture and your disposition towards humanity. Lord, may we take these words into our own heart and have the same. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So in this text, Jesus talks about this yoke, and what we need to understand is the yoke is a side-by-side relationship. It's a side-by-side relationship, but it's not equal. It's not standing side-by-side equally. I have a picture for you. So that thing in between these two animals is a yoke. They're yoked together. And JoJo was back here, and she was looking at the picture, and I said, you know, this is what Jesus is describing when he says, my yoke is easy. The thing that I'll put on you is easy. And I said, JoJo, which one of these do you think is going to carry the most of the burden, the most of the weight? And she pointed at the big bull, you know, and I was like, that's right. Why do you think that? She was like, because it's bigger. It's like, yeah, it has more capacity. How can I say this? What I was trying to explain to you earlier is that in this picture with this yoke, I'm the donkey. I'm the donkey. And Jesus is the one who has the most capacity. He's the one who is bearing all the burden, right? Like, you think about it, I live in a world with kids right now, right? That's just the season of life I'm in. And so you can look towards like maybe having kids and you can think about this. You can look back on when your kids were little kids and you can think about this. But like, have you ever, my girls, most of the time, I'm going to brag on them. Most of the time, they really like to help. Like we did the popsicle play date thing yesterday, and they helped all day, did things. But have you ever had those moments where they're like, "Hey, here, let me help, Dad. Let me help carry that." And I'm like, "Sure," and it's like this thing, and like, it's actually harder because they're helping, Like it's like, but they're like, "Dad, I'm helping." And you're like, "Oh yeah, you're doing so good. You're really helping." It's like, are you helping? You're not. You're making this even. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And they're bearing. And here's what we do as fathers and mothers. What we do is we carry on with that and we're like, "Oh yeah, you're doing such a good job. You're so strong. Oh, you're so strong." And we encourage them. Why? Not because they're actually necessarily contributing anything to bearing the burden or the yoke that we're trying and attempting to carry, but because they're with you. They're side by side doing something, and that there's something intuitive in our nature that when our children are alongside of us, doing it with us in relationship, there is a joy that spurs in them. And when your father or the mother sees that joy in our child, it spurs up in us, right? There's nothing more joyful than to be side by side with our children, doing something together. This is the idea of the yoke. This word, lowly. I'm lowly and humble. It means accessible. He's accessible. It's actually like a term. Like, here's a great example. By nature of my position in life, I would be low. You can come. Door's always open. Like, you just call. You can talk to Pastor Austin anytime. I'm nothing special. You don't have to go through a secretary or anything. Just holler at your boy. I'm here. Then, on the other hand, try to call like President Biden. Do you have any access to him? You're going to be able to get him on the phone, have a conversation with him? No. This is the idea. This is the idea. Those who are upper crust and have it all together, like they're hard. You don't have accessibility to them. But Jesus is saying, like, I'm lowly, like I'm like the poor people. Like, you just go up, meet them, talk to them, boom, there it is. Always is readily accessible, side by side relationship. And the thing is, in this picture, as I just described, it's not that like we're sharing a burden together in this side by side relationship. He's doing all the heavy lifting and he's setting the pace, but you're keeping in step with him. That's the idea. He's bearing the load and he's setting the pace, but we are yoked up with him, just keeping pace, The big ox, it sets the pace and bears the majority of the burden. Jesus sets the pace and bears the majority of the burden. This is the idea of the yoke. And it's not about the picture here. This is just the way of describing rabbis, and y'all have heard me talk about this over and over, but every rabbi had his own yoke. The rabbi's yoke was his teaching and interpretation of the Old Testament or the Torah. And more specifically, it wasn't just his teaching, but it was the way that rabbi lived out his life in accordance to that. So if you were following, or if you were a talmidim of a rabbi, if you were an apprentice to a rabbi, okay, what you would begin to do is adopt the very lifestyle of the rabbi, which was in accordance to his understanding and teaching of the Old Testament. So when Jesus comes on the scene here and says, my yoke, he's talking about his teaching and his way of living out the entirety of the Old Testament. It's a way of life. It's what we talk about here, the way of Jesus. It's the way of Jesus. That's what we're aiming at. But here's the challenge. We're all the donkey, which means we're broken people. We're broken people. We're right? Donkeys are known for being stubborn. I don't know about you, but your boy can be stubborn. And something we say around here all the time is broken people break people. Broken people break people. That's just the matter of the fact. And here, Jesus says, come to me all who are weary and burdened. You know what I love about this? There's no qualifiers. What he doesn't say is, you can come to me if you're wearied and burdened by doing good. You're aiming for Christ-likeness in your life, and you're trying to do spiritual things, and you're trying to live like God. You're doing it all on your own. You're working towards something good. He doesn't say that. And he doesn't say, well, the only people who can come to me are those who their life is just a train wreck because of their own horrible decisions and their own brokenness and the things that they're doing. There's no qualifiers here. He says, it doesn't matter why you're burdened and heavy laden. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why you're weary and burdened. He says, if you are, come to me. Come to me. Burdened. This idea, or weary, this is self-imposed. Okay? Some of us don't need anyone to put a burden on us. We put a big enough burden on ourselves. So here, if that's you, you know what you'll end up, if you're not already there, you'll end up weary. Here, in this next part though, we need to have a worldview, which means we have the entire world in view, not just the world in our current generation, but in the historical understanding of it as well. Some of us, we put the burden on ourselves. Others of us have had burdens put on us. You think about places around the world where there are serious burdens placed on people by their governments, by their lack of governments, by a whole plethora of things, by their families, by their religion, by their theocracies, whatever, you name it. This heavy laden or burdened is others imposed on you. Can we just go ahead and say Jesus has everyone in mind here? Whether you're weary from self-imposed burdens or you're weary from others' imposed burdens on you, it's you. And what we need to hear him say is, come to me. The invitation is open. But listen to me, we're broken people. As I said in a minute ago, like what I know the truth. I know the advice that I would give you if you were doing the thing that I'm doing. But I don't want to hear it or heed it. And so what do? We say things like this. Yeah. I know that's true for others that are weary and burdened, but you don't know what has been done to me. You don't know what's happened to me, or you don't know what I've done. Yeah, that's true for them over there. That's true for them over there, but it's not true for me. That may be true for others, but that's not been my experience. So what we do is we don't come. We function like those in Jeremiah chapter 6. He says, take it. And we say, we won't. We won't. Instead, we become more rooted in our own way. You know what I need to do? I just need to keep going. I'm burdened right now, but if I just keep going a little bit longer down this path, then the burden will lift and I won't be so weary. I got a little bit further to go. You know what I need is, the reason I'm burdened is because control's slipping from my fingers and people aren't doing what I need them to do. What I need to do is get more control and get people to do what I want them to do. So, this is what we become. We become more cynical and critical. And what's amazing about this, if you read verses prior to this, this is exactly the context and what's happening here. Jesus says to them, because they're bashing Jesus about how he's living, about his lifestyle, about his way, about his yoke. And he says, John the Baptist, the guy who, Jesus being here, paraphrasing Jesus, says, the guy who, there's no other man ever been born like this guy. He came to you like a wild man, eating locusts and fasting and dressed in camel's hair. And you rejected him. John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say, he has a demon. The Son of Man came, eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton, a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Cynical and critical. We talked about it this Wednesday night. Elizabeth's sister owns a four-wheeler excursion business in St. Croix. So if you're ever in St. Croix, you know, it's a really cool thing, right through the jungle on four-wheelers. But it's like one time she got like a one-star review. And here's what the one-star review was for. It rained. If you want to find a problem, you'll find it. And it's less about others, and it's more about what's in you. Cynicism and criticism, which is just a form of pride and self-elevation. So these are the things that we move to. Instead of coming to Jesus, we don't come and we move towards these things, rooted in our own way. We keep going a little further, more control, more cynical, more critical. And the thing that we are seeking after, we don't know it yet. I say it all the time, and here's how I would say it, and it's from a quote from Augustine in the Confessions. Say, everyone is seeking Jesus, just some people haven't identified Jesus as the thing they're seeking. They just don't know it yet. Augustine said it this way: man is made for Christ, and his heart is without rest until it rests in him. So no, I'm not coming. I'm more control, more cynicism, more criticism. And we become a type of people who are just more broken, and more broken people break more people. And here's what I want you to hear. God never responds to your hurting him with hurting you. You know, your default, let me speak for myself. You know, my default is when someone wounds me, I'm coming back wounding you. I want to the level in which you've stabbed me, I want to respond with stabbing you. I think we're all that way. Broken people break people. It's that whole Medea thing. I ain't getting God. You ain't getting me. I ain't getting God. I'm going to get you before you get me. Ain't nobody getting me. I'm going to get them before they get me. Y'all know what I'm talking about? I ain't getting God. I'm going to get her. I ain't getting God. And what's funny about that is like, yep, we're all like, no, Medea's going through that whole thing. We're like, yep. See, it says here that Jesus says, I'm lowly and humble. I'm gentle. Gentle. This is not weakness. This word is used 3 times in Scripture. It's used at the beginning of Matthew. It says the meek. It's translated the meek, and it says they will inherit the earth. It's strength under control. It's translated the word to humble when it says that the king, he would come humble on a donkey. He would come humble. It's gentle. The idea is this, man. Jesus is not trigger happy. God's not trigger happy with judgment. He's not just waiting to shoot you down. Jesus is the most understanding person in the universe. Did you hear that? We need to get this into the depths of our soul. Jesus is the most understanding person in the universe. His most natural position is not pointed fingers, but open arms. Now, hear me. What I'm not talking about is safety. If you are in a position relationally with someone who is unsafe and is harming you, the biblical response is to distance yourself from that. Understand? Do I need to go any further with that? If you have any questions, you can talk to me. It's never okay to continue and use biblical scriptures to keep yourself in a relationship where another person is harming you. Make that very clear. I'm not talking about safety here. I'm just talking about in most of our relationships, even the greatest ones we have, even the multitude of times my wife has been kind and shown love to me, the moment she pulls out the small little dagger and pokes my finger like I'm getting my, what do you test with that when they get blood sugar? Is that what that is? Blood sugar, like that. She'll poke me. I don't even go for the poke on the finger. I'm going for, and here's the deal. I'm telling y'all, I'm messed up, all right? I'm messed up, I know. I'm better at it than Elizabeth because I'm better with words. So I can get in there. Jesus is never like that. God is never that way. When we harm him by typically most often harming others, his response to us is never harm back at us or hurt us. It's open arms. So the idea is, yeah, I think we would all nod our head and say broken people break people. True. But the other thing I want you to know is, Elizabeth and I were talking about this week. I'm not going to stop by just saying broken people break people anymore. Because the truth of the matter is healed people work toward healing people. This is what it means when he's talking about it's easy. It's easy. It means it's kind. It means it's kind. This is a kind burden. It's the kind of burden that you want to bear. It's like telling a drowning man to put on a life preserver. Would it take some work? Yeah, but you wouldn't consider it a burden at all. It would free you. Yeah, you're gonna have to do something. You're gonna have to slide your arms in, or you can wear it like I like to wear it like a diaper. You need to sit. It's gonna take you some work to get that thing on and get your feet through the armholes. It's gonna be a little uncomfortable sometimes, but it's gonna keep you afloat. It's like a balloon that's deflated, right? You can fill it up full of air, and we're always trying to fill it up. We're always trying to fill up balloons with our life with air. We're trying to our own breath, right? We're filling it up. But what does it do? Yeah, okay, it's now inflated, but it's still just on the floor. Balloons were meant to be like up here, visible, seen, floating. So yeah, does You put helium in that balloon. Does it stretch the balloon? Sure. If you were the balloon, it would be a little uncomfortable. But you'd be able to reach purpose. You'd be out on display. This is the idea. And here's what I'm trying to say. People say this all the time. Jesus meets us in our place of need. I understand what that's saying. I don't disagree with that. But here's what I would say. I think a better way to say it is Jesus lives at our place of need. That's where he resides. That's his very heart. So anytime we're functioning out of placing a need on him, we're not with him. Because that's where he's at. That's where he's at. So here's the way I like to talk about it. Big truth, big grace. To some degree, I feel like I've modeled that. I've exposed a lot of y'all. Like some of y'all's like, we're out. This pastor's crazy. He's got all kinds of issues. But here's what I believe about it. I'm being honest right now. Here's what I believe about this. Big truth, big grace. Big truth, big grace. To the level in which you're willing to be honest about your brokenness and your need for him is the level in which he will meet you with grace. And as much as you are overwhelmed or burdened or weary, his grace overwhelms and burdens all of that. He lives at our place of need. He is aware and ready to bear with us. And remember, it's not an equal bearing. He bears the majority of the burden. Remember, I'm the jack, the donkey. So God's response to us when we are broken, hurt, and failing, when I'm tired and overwhelmed, is to invite me closer, not punish or leave me behind. His response is always to invite you and I closer. Come to me. Take up my. Inviting us closer. His response is never to punish or leave us behind. He says, I am gentle and lowly in heart. Here's the challenge, y'all. Like when we think and describe God, how do we describe him? Oftentimes what comes to our mind is judgy, all-powerful, sovereign. This is what we think intuitively. We are apt to think that because he's holy, therefore he has a sour and severe disposition towards us. He's not able to tolerate or bear us. Because this is how we function in the world. This is a worldly perspective. The more wealthy one becomes, it's proven statistically that the more they look down on people who are poor. The more beauty that you have by world standards, the more you are put off by people who don't meet that beauty. These are statistics that we can find. Studies have been done. This is how the world thinks. And that has crept in to our thinking about God. So we would say, sure, Jesus comes close to us, but he holds his nose. Right? Why? Because, well, he's the risen Christ. He's the highly exalted one. He's the one to whom all knees will bow. His eyes are like fire and his voice is like a roaring water. A two-edged sword flies from his mouth. How could I come into his presence? That's all biblical from Revelation. And this is the one. This is the one. It's talking about Jesus. All those descriptors there are talking about Jesus. Yet, when Jesus describes himself to his Father, what he says is, I'm gentle and lowly. He doesn't cringe to touch unworthy sinners. He longs to embrace sinners. This is why we need the Bible. This is why you need this book, and you need to open it and read it on the daily. You and I both. Because when we perceive and make our own perceptions of God, He either looks just like us and doesn't challenge us, or He's distant and far off and we can never stand before Him. And neither are true. He doesn't look like you, and He's not far off from you. He doesn't look like you, and He's not far off from you. You look like the donkey. Sorry. You get what I'm saying? He longs to embrace us. Alone, we only develop a God that's not wanting us. For this reason or that reason, we can come up with a whole plethora. If you're really good at it like me, I can make the whole long laundry list of reasons God shouldn't like me and shouldn't want to be with me. This idea of heart, it's the central animating center of all we do. It's the motivation headquarters. It's not a part of who we are, but it's the center of who we are. It drives all that we do, all that we are. And Jesus describes Himself, I am lowly and humble in heart. The one time He opens up His mouth and describes to us what His heart is like, the center of His being, the motivating factor that drives everything He does. He says, I'm lowly and gentle. If we were looking on His social media profile, the drop-down menu in His bio on His website, it would read simply, I'm gentle and lowly. I'm lowly and humble. So lowly and gentle is not one way He acts towards us. He can't act any other way. Just as you can't change your eye color, it's just, your eye color is just part of who you are. He can't change functioning from His heart, which is gentle and lowly, arms open, not fingers pointed. I am gentle and lowly in heart, is what Jesus says. And we're all like, amen. That's a good king. I want to worship Him. I want to come to Him, and I want to take up that yoke, because that sounds better than any other yoke I've been putting, whether it's self-imposed or one from someone else. But here's where the rubber meets the road, church. Someone has to go first, or we just keep hurting one another, making each other more weary and burdened. So He bears the weight of this burden. Think about it. The greatest burden that Jesus had to bear for us was the burden of the cross. Altogether different kind of looking piece of wood. And He hangs on the tree in the greatest need that we needed someone to bear on our behalf was the cross. It was the greater burden. It was the greater judgment. This thing that Jesus dying on the cross. So think about it. Why would He not then bear the weight of the burdens and the struggles in the now for you? So it's like we have this mess. I'm so jacked up. I have this thought that Jesus would bear the burden of the cross and the judgment of God on my behalf, but He won't bear the burden of the things that's going on in my everyday life. He bore this burden so that He could help you bear these burdens. That was the whole purpose behind it. And so, here's where it's tough. The people in my life need this same response from me. Jesus meets my hurting Him with open arms. My hurting Him through typically hurting others. He meets me with open arms. Come to me. Come to me. Weary and burdened. Come to me. I understand. And what He's saying is, when you come to me, I will bear your burdens, and I will enable you to do the same for others. The people in my life need this same response from me. They need the yoke. They need this way of life. They need to see this way of life. And what's amazing is this yoke idea, as I talked about a minute ago, was tied to their interpretation of the law, and they would actually call it that. It would be the yoke of the law. And it was the way they lived out. As I said, it's their lifestyle according to the way they understood the law, these rabbis. And Jesus comes on the scene and he says, listen, all the law and the prophets points to me. Back at it. Jesus don't call us to a list of rules. He calls us to relationship with him side by side. He said, listen, you made it about all these rules and stuff, but it was all pointing to the Messiah, Yeshua Mashiach. Jesus calls people not to the law, but to himself. But here's the challenge. We like the side-by-side yoke when it benefits us. But what about when it doesn't? We're really like, yeah, Jesus bears my burdens when it benefits us. But when somebody wounds me, what I want to do is go back to the picture because I'm the one on my left. What I want to do is I'm going to take my head out of the yoke. Be right back. All right, we can go now. Back with you, Jesus. And I just want to wound and stab others in those moments. And the thing is, these people in your life, they need the same response. Open arms. Open arms. So the question is still Jeremiah 6:16. This is what the Lord says. Stand by the roadways and look. Ask about the ancient paths. Which is the way to what is good? Then take it and find rest for yourselves. But you know how they responded? They protested, we won't. And so often we say we won't. We say, let me take care of this. I'll be right back. Back with you, Jesus. Because what we're saying is my way's better. And so here's the reality. Here's what we then, and so we operate that way, and then this whole relationship with Jesus actually isn't working out because in the most important moments of our lives, like we're not even yoked to him. We've taken the yoke off and we've moved over here and done our own thing. And now we're like, man, walking with Jesus, and what we need to do is throw off all burden. So that's where our culture has got. We need no burden. The problem isn't the burden, it's that we take up the wrong burden. We take up the wrong burden. My way is better. I'll bear this load. The problem isn't the burden. It's taking up the wrong burden. It's good to bear a burden in life as long as it's the right one at the right time. Jesus sets the pace and bears the majority of the burden. Dallas Willard said this. In this truth lies the secret to the easy yoke. The secret involves living as Jesus lived in the entirety of his life. Adopting his overall lifestyle. Our mistake is to think that that following Jesus consists in loving our enemies, going the second mile, and turning the other cheek, suffering patiently and hopefully, while living the rest of our lives just as everyone else around us does. It's a strategy bound to fail. John Mark Comer summed it up this way. If you want to experience the life of Jesus, you have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus, the yoke of Jesus. He says, come to me. Come to me. Take up my yoke. Set off the other yokes. Take this one up, this lifestyle. Take on this way of being. God's response to us when I'm broken, or us when we're broken, hurt, failing, when I'm tired and overwhelmed, is to invite me closer, not to punish or leave me behind. And the people in my life need the same response from me. Need the same response. So as Stu comes and the band. I think they're all coming. I don't know. We're gonna sing a song. As followers of Jesus, to take on the yoke is to be linked up side by side with Jesus and let him set the pace and let him bear the burden. And when we do that, we take on the same posture of him naturally. Wide open arms, ready, receiving all that he has. And people receive it. Even when people wound us, even when people harm us, we don't come back wanting to harm them. We don't become broken people, breaking people. We become healed people, helping heal people. This is what it means to walk in the way of Jesus, to walk and to be covered in the dust of our rabbi. And there's this song that they're going to lead us in. And here's the thing, man. No matter, I told you, there's no qualifiers. No matter what, no matter why you're burdened, no matter if it's your own issues or others' issues, it doesn't, like, there's no qualifiers. It's just come to me. Come to me. You don't have to, like, work on yourself, fix yourself. No, come to me, put this on, and then I'll work on you as we work in the world. That's how this is going to go. And so we're going to sing this song that points to this, because for us, I gave us worldly things, examples of how we relate to people, and it just doesn't make sense. We're like, Jesus, that doesn't make sense. It's because we think worldly. And this song talks about the reckless love of God. And then some people hate it, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't call God's love reckless. It's like, well, you don't understand figurative language and how to communicate. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. Don't email me about this, okay? Don't. You don't want that. You don't want the smoke. No, anyway. What it's articulating is that when we look at how God always, this is not his posture. His is this. We think, that's reckless. Like, that's reckless. You know what I do if I do this? I get hurt. You're like, yeah, yep. But I'll bear the burden for you. I'll bear the burden for you. It's not your burden to bear. You can give it to him. That's why he'd say, they're going to hate me, they're going to detest me, they're going to do things to you, and it's not because of you, it's because of me. It's because you're yoked up to me. What they did to me, they're going to do to you. He says he will bear this burden. Come to me. And here's what I always say. C.S. Lewis said it best. It's not safe, it's not comfortable, but it is better. The way of Jesus isn't going to keep you from harm. It's not going to keep you from problems in your life and stresses. No, in fact, it's going to take some work. But the beautiful thing is it's better. It's better. The way of Jesus is better. Adopting the lifestyle of our Lord and Savior Jesus because of what he did on the cross is better. And here's what he says. The invitation is here. You can experience this reckless love, as we would call it, that, like, what? Open arms. He says, just come to me. Come to me. Humble yourself before the Lord. Humble yourself before. Come to me. Come to me. Take on this yoke and watch what happens. It's an invitation to every single one of us. Saved, unsaved, all of us right now. He's still offering the same offer. Because how many of you know sometimes, as I said before, I take off the yoke and get my own yoke and do my own thing over here. And I got to be reminded to come back. And you know what? You know how he responds to me? Not with pointed fingers, open arms. And this is important. We have to understand and see God this way. We have to see God this way, because when we begin to understand, and it moves from head knowledge where we've read it on a page, but it moves to our heart, then it can flow from our hand. That's how things work. They go into your head, then they move to your heart, and then they come out your hand. And those around you, listen to me, those around you, they need this same response. The response that God has towards you, they need that response from you to them. Amen? That's the offer. Receive his mercy, receive his grace, and then pour out that mercy and that grace towards others by bearing his yoke. We're going to worship. I want you to stand. We were singing loud a while ago. I'm just sing. If you don't, you're wrong.